Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So in the last episode, I spoke about how you can use your child component inside the parent component, which was pretty simple, right? At the end of the day, you might get such a similar scenario, which is great. So if I go to that code, the home screen, any home screen, doesn't matter. Okay, if I do send message, say hello from a parent, now you must be thinking, it's might be similar to what I've demonstrated last time, right? Yeah, the only difference is that in this case, I'm not using the parent component reference the child component reference inside the parent component. Instead, I'm making sure that the child component listen to the events that's published by a parent component. So I'm going to talk about a pattern called observable pattern, where a publisher keep notes of all um, the components that needs to receive the notification, or in other words, a child components list of child component. Uh, and so what that will do is that so when the parent component publishes something, right, and the child component acts as a receiver, and it will receive the information. So it's more like a PubSub model, which I've demonstrated in the past. So the difference is that here I'm going to use the Lightning messaging system or messaging service, what you can say, to publish the information through the message channel, and the child will be subscribed to that message channel, and whenever parent broadcasts an information, child component will receive it. Now, the Lightning message system is pretty simple to implement, and though it may sound complicated from the naming literature, but from an implementation perspective, it's not really that complicated. So I'm going to show you how to do that and walk you through the code. A few things to note though, right? Since we're using the PubSub architecture behind the scene, performance could be a challenge at times if you have lots of components which act as a receiver. The another thing you have to keep in consideration that I'm talking right now, the drawbacks at this stage, is that the Lightning message servers only work for the same browser. So that could be a challenge if you really wanted to build it in a form of a client server architecture. That may not really work, like an out of box functionality. Um, and in terms of advantage, I can think about it's very modular. You will have separate components. You don't really have to let the parent component knows, what the child component is all about. So if you have, parent component which is written in LWC, if you have a child component which is built using Visual Force Page, you can use Lightning Message Service. If you have a parent component that is built between if you have a parent component that's built using LWC, and you have a child component that's built using LWC, you can still use Lightning Message Service. That's exactly what I've done here. So I'm using two LWC component, and the exchange of message which happens between them, is usually because of the Lightning Message Service which I've implemented. So that's all from a theory perspective. I hope that's clear. So all I'm trying to do is that I have a parent component. I want to broadcast same information to different components on the same browser. And so I've used the Lightning Message Service. So it is also called as an observable pattern. So when one is an observer and one, it's going to broadcast the stuff. So enough of theory. I'll show you what you can do about it. Okay. So the first thing first, right? You need to create a message channel. Now, you can't create the message channel at this stage using user interface, so you're gonna have to do using the VS Code. So all I've done, right? So I went to the Force app main default, and I created a folder called the message channel, which is a folder which contains the list of the message channel. And remember one thing: if you are using a message channel, make sure that that is unique to the component, child component which you want to broadcast. If you have, say for instance, a different child component, right, which needs a different information, then you can't use the same message channel, because then what will happen is that, let's say you have a parent component which acts as a broadcaster, and you have a child component. Let's say you have four child components, and out of the four child components, let's say one is written in Visual Force, right, and three are in LWC. So out of three, let's say two components expect to receive the message from a parent, but the last two component, like that is the one which is written in Visual Force, and another LWC component, expect to receive a message from a different parent broadcaster. So in that case, you need to use a separate channel, right? I hope that's clear. Because otherwise, what happens is that you're going to broadcast the same information using, different parent, then it might cause a conflict in terms of, or authenticity in terms of the message that's been delivered. So what I've done, like I said, I've created a new folder called message channels, exactly message channel. Then I've created a new um, file, which I've named it as my message channel, because this is the name of the message. Uh, this is the name of the channel I wanted to give, my message channel. And then I gave the file the name appended with dot message channel dash meta.xml. So if you come to this file, right, so it's pretty simple in terms of information. So what I'm doing is that I'm saying, hey, give me the master label. So this is the tag, the Lightning message channel. You can refer to the help documentation. It explains pretty well. So pretty what exactly I'm trying to do. So the message channel is the name, is exposed, obviously, right? The description and the Lightning message field. Obviously, you need to provide the field, right? And using that field, you will be transferring your information. So in our case, all I'm trying to do, a parent component wants to send a simple message. So I'm using this field called message, okay? So this is just the current data that represents the record that changed. So whatever message that get changed, that comes through here. Okay, it's all simple, and this will be this specific file, right? When you deploy it to your org, it will be in the form of my message channel underscore underscore C. It's not really custom object, right? So you can't really go to a custom object and create it. So you need to, at this stage, this is the only option to do so. Maybe, Salesforce might change in the future. So like I said, I created a folder called message channels. And then I created a file inside because I wanted to use this message channel. I hope that's clear. Okay. So now I've used the same LWC component, which I've demonstrated yesterday. That's the child and the parent. So I'll go here. So this is the observable parent. Let's look at the parent, right, which act as a broadcaster. So when I look at the HTML code, it's not much. It's pretty much something I've added a button component. So on click of the button, it should propagate a message. That's all the functionality is about from a parent side. Let's look at the JavaScript code, right? JavaScript code is pretty simple. First of all, you're importing all this stuff from LWC. Then you're using message service. So importing two methods, publish and message context. So message context, it provides a context for a message, right? It contains information about the message that's been published, and it contains information like publisher ID, record ID, subscribers information. So and then this is a publish, right? Send a message to a listener, subscribe to the channel. So um, if you ask me in a simple term, in a simple language, how do you define this Lightning message service? So you have a component which acts as a broadcaster, means which broadcasts the stuff, and then you have a child component which acts as a listener. So this is exactly what I meant when I talked about observable pattern. So the Lightning message service kind of mimics that behavior. So you could have more than one child component subscribing to this message channel, and that they will act as a listeners. Okay. Now you remember I spoke about the Lightning message channel creation by going to Visual Studio Code and adding the folder, and inside the folder a new file. So that new file, the name of the file, my message channel, will act as the kind of a custom object, but it's not really a custom object, which is like a message channel. So it has to be appended with underscore underscore C. Okay. So before you deploy this, you need to deploy the message channel first, then you deploy this. Okay. So I hope that's clear. So I've named this as my message channel. You can name it whatever you want, right? And message to send. This is a hard-coded message. You have a very complex business requirement where you want to send a different information. Just to prove your concept, just to explain you the concept, I'm just trying to demonstrate with a very, very basic example so that I don't confuse people who wants to understand this concept. This is a very powerful concept. I've used this concept in C Sharp. I use this concept in Delphi. I've used this concept in other tech I've worked. In Salesforce, it's pretty simple, right? It's pretty out of box. In other tech, I have to build it from the scratch. So it's an interesting thing. Okay, so you have message context, and so this one is a wide. So you're getting a context, right? And then handle send. So what I'm doing is that I'm sending this message out. Okay. So when I click on handle send, click button, when the user say, hey, send this information. So I'm getting this message to send, right? Which is like a payload. So this is right. And then I'm passing the payload here. And what I'm doing is that, hey, uh, publish this message. So we got this message context, right? Which, like I said, which contain information about the message, and then message channel and the payload. So it's going to publish this information to that channel. Okay. So once that's done, what happens is behind the scene, there were different child components which act as a listener. I'm going to show you the child code right now. So this child code. So first of all, let's look at the not this one. Sorry. HTML. HTML is pretty simple, right? I'm just displaying a message, nothing else. Okay, to JavaScript. So I have to import the message channel here as well, obviously because I need to subscribe to it. Okay, and I have to import the message, subscribe, and content here because obviously when you're talking about a listener, they have to subscribe to a channel. That's exactly what this import is about. It will give you a method using which you can subscribe to this specific channel, which you have imported already. Okay. Now your message here, the message context, the same thing, right? So in previous case, you are actually publishing it with the message context as an input param, then the channel name and the payload. Okay. In this case, I need to use the same message context to receive the data back. So connected callback, obviously when the component is loaded to a DOM, so it will automatically subscribe to the message channel. So this is a subscriber code. So this is subscription, and so what I'm doing is that I'm subscribing using the message context, and the channel name, and callback. So in this, what happens is that whenever you receive a message, right? So this will get picked up here under handle message, which is here, and then that message will be displayed to the user. So it's like a very simple pub/sub code, okay? And this is what happens when you disconnect a callback; it will unsubscribe, right? Which is a good practice to do, in my opinion. So I hope this is a very simple code for you to understand. There's nothing fancy going on here. So we have two components. One is the parent component. Another one is the child component. Child component acts as a listener. You can hook up, 5 more components if you like, right? Without even worrying about the parent code. So it's like a modular structure, right? Parent really don't care, what's going on with the child, right? Parent's job is just to subscribe it, and child's job is to receive it. Okay. So, and this architecture makes it very modular, right? You don't have to, or in other words, it's a decoupled architecture, right? Because it's very bad when you have two components coupled to each other, like in the previous case I've seen. I'm not saying the previous one, which I demonstrated, is a bad example, right? We have a use case for that. I've done that because, like I said, the Lightning message may not be a great solution all the time, right? Because it might have performance impact if you want to broadcast it too many components. And security could be an implication if you don't implement it properly. So you have to factor those things into consideration as well. Just because Salesforce offer this functionality doesn't mean that you have to just go crazy on this stuff and start implementing everywhere without really understanding the use case. It's case by case, right? Based on your use case. So in this case, it does the job, but where you need to have a multiple stack of the child component sitting on a parent container, I don't think so. The Lightning message is a great solution there. So, so yeah, I mean, and then like I said, you need to have error handling. I haven't added error handling, so I'm going to talk about error handling in the coming episode, which is very important in my case. Everything you write, you need to have a process in place in your code where you capture the error when something goes wrong. Otherwise, as a developer or as a user, it just it's like pushing the stuff into a no man's land where you can't and then getting confused at the same time, wondering what's going on, why it's breaking, why it's crashing, right? So it's always good to have an error handling process in place, and not just to have a process in place, but once the error goes to, say, a custom object or somewhere, what are you exactly going to do with that error? Are you going to archive it? Are you going to look at it? Are you going to try to solve the problem based on error? Because, if you watch my podcast with Hathor, he clearly mentioned that sometimes what happens, right? I've seen too, in one of the government agencies I work, they're capturing lots and lots and lots of error, but nobody's taking a look at it. It's pointless, right? Because you're bloating the size of the error custom object, and without even realizing, right, things are not working really, right? So yeah, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about, right? Because for me, error handling is really important, and yeah, I hope this is clear. This is one of the pattern you can use it. It's called observer pattern, which is very popular in Salesforce world. Um, I hope you would have used it before if you've been developing on LWC for a while. So yeah, this all I wanted to explain in today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you guys have amazing Sunday. Adios.